What's up, y'all? My name is T, pronoun he and him, and I am one half of the T with TNT, and this is.
Tamara Lee, the other half, pronouns she, her. You have been joining us for quite a while on TBTNT, so you should know the routine. We have a topic that comes from the things happening in the world. Today, we're gonna have a topic that is not so much out of the news, but out of the social media streets. But it sparked a lot of conversation, and so we're gonna talk about it, and we would like to talk about it with you. You know what we didn't do is I didn't share out the thing because usually we do that after the introduction.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. So pause on that intro for just a minute.
No, not pause. We can still talk and say hello to the people. I mean, it's been a while. We really took like June off, right? Not
We
really
did.
June off, but like we didn't have a show in June. And June was a busy month for us both, so. Um, Yeah, June was a super busy month for me for sure. It's definitely Pride Month, Juneteenth month, my birthday month, summer solstice, just all the things.
Did you say Juneteenth? And Juneteenth.
I did say Juneteenth, of course.
Okay,
I
good.
did
It's
not
Juneteenth.
not
How
say
could you? How could you skip Juneteenth? Our
yeah,
Juneteenth baby, Juneteenth-ish baby.
right. So yeah, June was pretty busy for me. I had a great time in June. Did a little bit of traveling, a lot of bit of traveling. Where did I go in June? Well, I went a lot of places, but June specifically, I think I started out June um, in Illinois. That's where my June started at, Illinois, on a farm, doing some like farm work, cultivating land, sleeping in tents, and like spent like 4 5 days outside on a trip with a couple of other trans brothers, which was dope. First time sleeping outside in the tent. Yikes. No. It was cool. I'm not really a camper. I'm more of a glamper. So like give me like Wi-Fi and stuff and I'm feel cool. But like oh, it was a new experience. The farm was dope. It was very cool farm owned by black farmers in community as well, which was dope. Hung out with some guys from all over, and that was cool. Just met a whole bunch of new people. Then from there, what did I do next? Oh, I came back home because it was Pride here. So I helped one of my orgs, the Buffalo Niagara LGBTQ History Project, helped them with their float, was in the parade. Our float actually won an award, one of the best floats in the parade this year. And so we recreated the first ever Buffalo Gay Pride float. And what's funny is we picked up my friend along the way, and he ended up wearing almost the same color, similar outfit as one of the guys who was on the original float, and just by accident.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
I know, right? So when we looked at the pictures, it was like very, very great recreation. So that was cool. And then what did I do? I went on another trip. Uh, I went to where was I at after that? Oh, Boston. So I went to Massachusetts for another brotherhood trip, which was cool. Different set of brothers, uh, different set of brothers, Bond brothers, and we went to a weekend in Massachusetts called Frolic, which was LGBT, well, specifically queer, black, and trans black men event, which was like a weekend long. Um, my first time going. Very cool event. You know, yeah, it was a very cool event. It was probably one of the like, sometimes you go to events in queer spaces and they can get a little like cringy. Um, it was not like that at all. It was it was just very laid back. It was nice to be around like a very, very big group of guys, and like they took care of each other. There was like water stations at like all these different events. They gave you a water bottle to make sure you stay hydrated. There was people walking around reminding you to stay hydrated. Um, just was a very well put together event, which was nice. And then I went to ATL, which probably circle us a little bit into the next conversation to visit some friends that who are more like family to me, which was actually I spent my birthday with two people who actually brought me into ballroom when I was younger, and that's who I spent my birthday with. One of them lives in Atlanta, the other one lives in Philly, and flew into Atlanta. Um, so it had been like years since we had all been in the same space together, many, many, many moons. Um, so it was nice to just be around them and be in that space again. Um, so yeah, and then I'm back in Buffalo. It ended off June working, working with my youth, which is always fun. What
Well,
about you?
since you did that fabulous segue, let's get into it. I did a bunch of shit in June. It was Pride, but we don't need to talk about that. People,
Oh, it's a
everybody
bunch
on
of
my
fun.
Facebook knows where I was. It wasn't that important. It was cool. It was Pride. Let's get into this topic though. So I'm gonna start out this with full disclosure. I am not a part of a house. I am not part of ballroom. I've never walked a category in my live long life. However, because of the work that I do, and as sort of a LGBTQ Black queer historian, I am very, very familiar with the history of ballroom and the cultural significance. I've thrown balls. I try to promote ballroom in all of the things that I do to make sure that it is a recognized part of queer culture because not everybody understands what ballroom is or where it came from, the roots of it, why it's important, all the things. So I'm very familiar with the folks, with the people, with the culture, with the history. Um, but I think it's important, like full disclosure wise, to say that, I'm not in ballroom. So my observations will be more of like a cultural, um, more of a cultural, historical, just been around the scene perspective. You, however,
Me, however, I have been in ballroom for actually I started out in the Kiki scene a long time ago. Like I said, I think actually being in a part of ballroom because I used to dip in and out the scene when I was younger. I would say I didn't really join it until like 2012 ish.
which is still a
Um,
long ass time ago.
but also with that being said, I stopped for a really, really long time, and I think I just can't. I stopped, for my own personal reasons, and I just came back and joined mainstream in 2022 maybe. I think it was 2022. So yes, I am a part of more than one house, mainstream and Kiki. But like Tam said, full disclosure, my views are my views based on what I've seen inside and what I've been a part of. And it has nothing to do with any house that I'm affiliated with.
And with that
Or,
being said, oh,
yeah, with
go
that
ahead.
being
Go
said,
ahead.
I was gonna say, or any of the other organizations that I am affiliated with.
Fair. With that also being said, this initial story that really kind of brought this back to I think this is the constant conversation about the safety of ballroom and the things that happen in ballroom. If you have any friends that are in ballroom, if you're in ballroom, if you have any sort of like community connections to ballroom, I don't think that you can have missed the probably bi-monthly controversies that come out of ballroom. The most recent one, I'm not going to use any names. I know both parties. I know one party professionally. I know the other party for many, 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 many years personally. So this isn't about those people specifically, but it's just a conversation about the scene and about ballroom and um, some of the things that happen when something happens in ballroom and then it somehow makes its way to the larger ballroom community and the larger community in general. So if you are in the chat, I'm gonna ask you not to use any names either. I can't stop you. Once it's in there, it's in there. But we're talking about the community. We're not talking about specific people because those are other people's stories to tell, and it's not our business to be explaining. Those are other people's stories to tell at the in the way and at the time they see fit. We're just talking about Ballroom community and some of the stuff that pops up and some of the experiences that we've had that y'all have had. And yeah, so here we go. So the most recent story that has come out of Ballroom that has kind of been the topic of conversation around the country, honestly, because that's the thing about Ballroom, it's international. So stories don't stay in one house too long, like they spread. People also have incredibly big mouths, and everybody likes like the drama and the tea of it all, I think. And so really serious topics end up becoming like social media jokes and widespread conversation that may or not, maybe should or maybe shouldn't be, but it's what happens. So the most recent conversation that's kind of come up to the scene and that people have been discussing were accusations of sexual assault that came that were not at a ball. I mean, I think a lot of these things don't happen at a ball, but they're just a part of ballroom community and ballroom culture. And so there was a relatively well-known person from the community, from the national community, that came online to talk about his experience with sexual assault um, by another person who was in ballroom that he was familiar with, and how that has affected his life, why he chose not to go forward and contact the police, how the other person's house handled leadership handled that situation, how his own house leadership handled that situation, and I think the motivation was just to make it known how these situations affect people and how people choose or not choose to handle it, how that can have effects on everybody and how it could potentially leave other people in danger to be hurt in the future if they aren't handled. That was my take on what I read when that person came forward. What are your thoughts on that, T?
My thoughts are pretty similar. I think the person was sharing their story not only to get it out of their system because that's like a part of healing, one
Yeah.
or starting to heal. Um, and I also feel like they also um, wanted people to know so that other people may not be hurt or necessarily get put in that situation to be taken advantage of or things like that, just to bring awareness to other people to be more vigilant um, around things like that. That's kind of how I read it as well.
Now, the accused also came forward and I guess kind of made a statement denying the accusations.
Well,
They,
there was a live that night. Um, and I saw some clips from the live where people were discussing the situation. There was house father, and there was the accused also on this live. So yeah.
One of the audience asked this in reference to essay. Yes, this the conversation is about ballroom as a whole. We're talking about what has recently taken place that has brought this conversation back to the forefront and back to sort of culture across the board. So we're gonna talk about that initial situation, but it's certainly not the only one, and it's probably not the only controversy that you've heard in the last month. So it's one situation. Um, but it's certainly not the only situation. So yes, there was a live that there were some guests on. The accused came on. The accused house father came on. They made their statements. I guess basically the to the extent the thing about this particular situation is this isn't the first time that that person has been accused. Um, so obviously none of us know what happened. None of us were in the room. Um, but the person who did the accusing made their statement. The person who was accused made their statement. I would say my take on it, the accused statement was a little less cut and dry. It got into like accusing the accuser of being this, that, and the third, and it was a misunderstanding, and he didn't know what was going on. So he actually eventually got cut out of the live because people were like, we don't want to hear anymore. And so they actually cut him out of the live. So again, we're not the police, we're not detectives, we weren't there. So we can't tell you what didn't happen, but we can tell you how that has left waves pushing through the rest of the community. And it has definitely put up waves because there hasn't been a day since then that there hasn't been back and forth on social media. This house talking about that house, this person talking about that person, people coming forward in support of their house member, or people attacking the accused, or people on the accused side attacking the accuser's side. Like it's just been a lot. There's been a lot of things going on.
And some more comments. So it says Bree Star on YouTube has a live. Um Another comment that says in and out of ballroom, I think we turn a blind eye. People hang together and don't hold each other accountable. The microaggressive comments are red flags too. You look so young, you so cute, wait till you older. But we go up in arms and then it's forgotten until it happens again.
So that speaks to a couple different topics, right? So that's one, we're talking about that original like accusation of essay, and sort of in general when something happens, like people, there's a big, kerfuffle, and then it kind of dies down until something happens again. That's the observation of one of our watchers, and I think that's absolutely true. I think that is what happens. I think that's what happens in a lot of communities about a lot of things, but it certainly happens in ballroom. Um, and then that brings up a whole separate topic also of just inappropriate relationships in ballroom. First of all, we all know house rules. Um, there are very specific rules, different ones in different houses, but there are rules across the board as to what relationships in houses look like. There's been tons of conversation over the years about what like power dynamics in house relationships, as well as age differential. So very young people and very old people, house mothers, house fathers, and children, whatever. So that's not a new topic either, but it's certainly something that happens and you hear about all the time.
Yeah, the microaggressive comments, that was one that stands out to me. Just because I've heard, comments of, you know, people saying like, oh, they're of age. And like being of age could be 18, 19, 20, 21, depending on who's talking. So of what age? Because in my eyes and where live at in New York State, you're a youth till you 24. So youth programs go up to 24. So in my eyes, you a baby until you 24.
Well,
So
criminal justice wise, it's typically either 18 or 21. So
I get that. I get that. I'm just saying where I'm at, and and maybe I look at it a little differently because I work with kids. So, um, but yeah, I just see they brains ain't fully developed, so I don't see.
I mean, that's a fact. Age of consent is 18, but nobody's brain is fully developed till they're 24. So that is a thing. Another commenter said, "My question is, you think this is being held to this magnitude due to popularity?" Um, and then they also said, if you're of ages 19 and you're 46, where is the appropriateness? So I think that that is very important points that we need to separate. So one, popularity factor. I think what's interesting about this situation is both of the people in question with this particular situation are popular. So I do think that matters. I think that not necessarily because they matter more to people, but because of the size of each one of their audiences, this traveled more like wildfire than a lot of situations. That's just my personal opinion. I think that what side people take and how they respond has a lot to do with popularity, and not even so much popularity as like who your friends are. I think that it's really easy for people in the community to jump to the defense of people they know and like, and that be what is the deciding factor for them over truth or fiction.
And I,
And it's not true for everybody, but it is true for a lot of people. Like it does matter to people will defend their friends. That's certainly not just true in ballroom. I think that's and conversation about the 19 to 46, absolutely. I mean, and it's not just age. Like your financial situation, if you have money and another person doesn't have money, if you are in a place of leadership and the other person is in a place of leadership, if you are if you have access to like proximity to power and importance and things, if you are well known, if you're more popular, I mean there's a lot of dynamics. um it's just if we're talking about appropriate or if we're talking about legalities. Like some things aren't illegal, that doesn't make them not wrong. I mean,
right.
there's a big ass span there between what's okay and what's not okay and what you can go to jail for. Um and the thing about it is, even if you have consent, like even if you are underage, even with consent, it's still illegal.
Right.
Like that they you
Right.
can a 14-year-old can consent all day long. A 16-year-old could walk butt naked in front of you and do the Macarena, and that doesn't matter if you are overage. Like that is it. That is all. But with that being said, there are also power dynamics that change things. If you are living in someone's house and they can put you out on the street and that's the basis on which you agree to things, that's an inappropriate power dynamic. If you are, I mean, there are 46-year-olds that are very immature and don't have the sense that God gave them. And there are 19-year-olds that are very mature. However, if there are situational factors there, that means that you're in a more of a position of power than the other person. Like, absolutely, absolutely. There's a conversation between
More.
criminality and morality that that people have to find. Morals versus ethics, the commenter said. That's absolutely right.
I just think we see this a lot, especially in the black and brown community, where it's sometimes I feel like it's almost like ingrained in us. Because how many times do we see a show, or and this happened in real life, where like a parent doesn't believe a child because they so loyal to a boyfriend, a husband, a brother, a cousin, somebody who was put in the family and more financial stability, regardless of who it is. And it's like because of these dynamics, like we often don't believe the victim too. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of
And
black.
I don't even think that's a black or white thing. I think that's across the board. You hear stories all the time of white kids who go through the same thing. Like, unfortunately, we live in a society where a lot of things are forgiven and children aren't listened to. I mean, like we're not talking about minors, like specifically in this conversation necessarily, like in terms of the initial situation, but like I just think that American culture in general, unfortunately,
It's a cultural thing. Like,
It's a cultural thing,
it's
and I think that that happens in Black communities, and I think it happens in white communities. I think it's just an unfortunate thing across the board that happens. And I think the conversation gets I think that when something happens to a child, despite the fact that that gets covered up all the time, I think that when something happens to a child, you can get a more across the board understanding that this was wrong. Like maybe not the people inside that household or inside that dynamic of sickness and foolishness, but in the world, we look at it like, oh, that was a child, this is an adult. When someone is then legal, I think we lose a
a little
lot
bit.
of those ethics. I think we lose a lot of those ethics. Like how many times the like, and I'm not saying this with kids, but like in general, like victim blaming is a thing in this society. Like, what did you wear? How much did you drink? Like, I think one thing that was like really shocking to me, and again, I don't know what happened in that situation. I wasn't there. However, I think one of the things that was really shocking for me was how quickly we start excusing sexual assault because, well, how much did you drink? Did you sleep with this person before? Well, you went to their house. Well, you were around them. Well, I saw you talk to them later. Well, you didn't call the police. Especially the police thing. There's a million reasons. We want to talk about cultural. There's a million reasons why Black folks don't talk to police. And no shade, if the people in your own community have spent the last 2 weeks attacking you and your character and your sexual history and the way you present yourself online, what might do you think happen when you go to the police department? Who are typically not on our sides as Black people or queer people
Right.
ever. So like it shocked me how many people were like, "Oh, you didn't call the police, so is it the conversation is over?" And in that specific situation, there's even more reasons for that person not to call the police. And most sexual assault victims aren't taken seriously. And the process, and if you don't call the police immediately, so there can
Right.
be like evidence collection, reasons why it may not be a good idea for you to have police contact. But like the way that our community specifically answer was like, oh, well, you didn't call the police, understanding the relationship in history that most of us have with the police in this country, like blew me. That probably shocked me more than anything.
You know, I'm starting to feel like almost nothing shocks me anymore. And then that's kind of bad because I'm like, am I desensitized to things? Um, so
Well, I think that's also what's unfortunate. Like so many of us have been in situations that have to do with like sexual abuse or sexual misconduct or violence that instead of being for a lot of us it feels like instead of being even more sensitive to what happened to other people, there becomes this sort of like, well, I made it through or I handled it, so you'll be fine. And that's scary, especially in a culture like ballroom that is theoretically meant to protect, shelter, teach, um, like
mentor,
mentor, that's the word I was thinking. That was what this meant. Mentor and guide. Yeah, I was trying to, it just wasn't coming to me.
I got you.
That look, that's what ballroom was built on. Family, creating family when you didn't have any, having people to protect you like parents if you didn't have that same access to your parents. The Kiki scene was birthed for the purpose of growing people into being able to participate in mainstream. It was for youth. I mean, and that's another side conversation, which I don't know if we want to get into today, but like,
We don't even got the time.
should you be 35 doing Kiki? Like, is that dangerous when you have full grown adults participating in a scene that was designed for youth? That's a whole other side conversation.
We got some comments.
Let's hear from the people.
Let me see. Where am I at? Because I feel like there was a lot of comments that I missed. Mm-mm-mm.
I see one that says not addressing it is enabling it, in my opinion. Well, I totally agree. I think anything that you don't talk about, you don't tackle. What's unfortunate is I feel like it's being widely addressed, and maybe it is because the people in this situation are super, well known in the community. But like, address and then what? like I don't ever think like the conversation is incredibly important, and a lot of times we don't have uncomfortable conversations, but the conversation and then what, like
Right.
we
What's
can
the
talk
action?
about it, but if this happens again in 3 months, now we talked about it, but then like what happens, like is it I think it's incredibly difficult, like with the house structure, like the structure of houses. I think there's an expectation of each house to carry itself, conduct, to create rules and structure, and then follow and enforce those rules. But if those rules aren't consistent across houses, like what does that look like? Is there a governing body, and this is kind of rhetorical, but like is there a governing body that is higher than the mothers and fathers of a house that can then step in and be like, wait a minute, like this has come to light, like we need to, is this being handled appropriately? Like it's hard. I mean, and I think you can understand this is true in a family dynamic, in a work dynamic. Like if the people who are in charge are not living by the ideals designed by the house, like they can give you the best rules around, but if they're parsed out differently between people, if they are not being followed by anybody at all, if there is, there goes the popularity conversation again. Like if this is a person that has brought a lot of attention to your house, that wins categories, that is well known, that is your homie, um, what does that look like? Like where is the voice of the younger and probably and or more vulnerable members when something like this happens? Because a lot of the commentary that I saw looked like, well, you knew this has been happening, you knew this person had been accused, and nobody has ever done anything about it. Like this story came out, but like there's been 1,000 stories, and I like I said, I know these people, so I've heard the stories, like, so I
So,
know that that's not bullshit.
so I mean, I know one of the people, the other person I don't know at all. Um, but I think this is true with a lot of things that like you hear a story, right? Especially of like sexual assault or any wrongdoing, and then it's like you hear five other stories every time somebody talk about it.
Yep.
Somebody bring it up, and then it's like, oh, well, my friend said this happened to them too, or this happened to my friend with this person, and like how many times do we have to hear these stories over and over again? Because it's like, well, if that happened in 2022, like, and that happened in 2024, and now it's
Why are we here again?
like, why are we still here with these
Right.
same people and allowing them to continue in this safe space, which is basically now become like open season for targets? Because now it's like you got this, and me, I love ballroom. Let me just state that to begin with. Like, ballroom, when I was younger, gave me my one of my. I had an affirming family, but it gave me my queer family,
Yeah.
and that relationship that I have with those people that was in my first ballroom house, my first Kiki house, like those people are no longer my friends. They are like my family. Like,
Hmm.
I mean,
Which is what ballroom is supposed to be.
when I tell you, I ain't never put on a costume a day in my life in ballroom. However, do you know I had burns on my fingers from glue gun and stuff? I had poked myself with needles trying to learn how to stitch this together for this brother or this or that. But that was the Thursday thing. Like, we eating together, we gonna help each other together. Like, that was the Thursday thing we always did. So it's like, I love that space for those relationships that I built in those space, in those relationships, like that. And that's why I joined my ballroom house now. You know what I mean? That's why I came back. You know, relationships. You build those relationships with people. As you get older, some of those bonds never leave. It doesn't matter what house you go to. It doesn't matter where you at in life. You know what I mean? So like, and I also think ballroom is just an amazing art. I think there are so many talented people. Like, I get to watch people like Vogue and Dip and Runway and like all of those art
It's
forms.
it's an art, it's a sport, it's culture, it's
It's
history,
everything.
it's community, it's family. It's beautiful. It's
Right.
absolutely beautiful at its best.
But just like any other space, it can also be a breeding ground for harmful individuals. And that's the truth. And
Because
so
and the thing about it is, we it's no secret that there is immense poverty in the Black queer community. There is housing insecurity, food insecurity. Like, our communities, in the list of things where disparities live, the Black queer community, the trans community is always the most affected. And so that vulnerability also becomes a breeding ground for predators, because those are the people that need the most. And so that then makes them the most vulnerable for people with ill intentions to take advantage of them, and in a lot of different ways. And that's scary and unfortunate, especially when you juxtapose it to something that's so incredibly beautiful.
right. And I think like I see a lot of because I work with youth, I see a lot of youth who love ballroom, although they've never been to a bar. You know, I've seen a lot of youth who watch ballroom on YouTube, and they have their
YouTube.
favorite, yeah, YouTube, because I feel like around here a lot of the younger people came up during quarantine and they discovered ballroom during like that time period when we was trapped inside. Um, so
And
they
it's
they
also
did,
when all the show when it went mainstream in terms of like the shows, like,
yeah,
it was, like Pose was like recycling through Pose during quarantine. The show, the one that Laomi was on,
legendary,
yeah, Legendary. Like, a lot of people never, like, I feel like we came up in the generation, it was after Paris is Burning came out, but like that was still part of like cultural education that we received if
right.
we weren't in the scene. And I think that a lot of younger kids found it during during Corona, that maybe hadn't been exposed to it in the same way before that.
And you know they I feel like a lot of them hop into the scene and they already have like their favorites, you know what I'm saying, they already have these people that they look up to and that they like glorify, um because they're a legend, a statement, a star, whatever icon.
An icon.
Right. And like so they're already hopping in there with like these bright eyes and bushy tails. And a lot of times I see those same people like years later, and I seen a girl who put up a stat that was like, man, never meet your favorite icon, you'll be disappointed every time. And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
You put up a post recently that kind of touched on this, that I thought was like really important. Some of the things that you were saying. Can you like touch on that a little bit?
You want me to read the stat that I put up?
Yeah, if you could
I
find
can,
it. It was a while ago.
I don't post too much. I don't be on I don't post the things. So I'm yeah, so I wrote this stat after I seen the stat that this young man had wrote about his accounts to what happened. And then I seen um a lot of other I seen all the backlash that he got, and I seen like all these people like talking about it like it wasn't something that actually happened to a person, right?
Yeah,
And it really like just like reading his story, it was so sad.
it
Like
was. It
it
was.
it was hard. It was a hard read. It was a hard read. Um, and just seeing everybody talk about it, it was kind of like disgusting to me. It gave me like a really disgusting feeling. I'll be honest. So I don't know. I don't usually share what my thoughts are online, But like, I don't know, this particular, I'm the type of person that like, there are a few subjects that like I draw the line at to like, and these are one of them. So like sexual assault, crimes against women, crimes against kids, crimes against the elderly, crimes against any vulnerable population. And when I say crimes against women, I also mean trans women. So I would hope that I wouldn't have to like make that distinction, but I do mean all across the board crimes against
All women.
all women. Like those are things that like, yeah, you don't get, for me, there's no forgiveness, there's no lenience, there is no turning a blind eye. I'm just not that guy. Like, when I wear my shirt that says protect the dogs, like, I mean that. I'm not one of them people that's just about to hold a sign and like, and see something happening and be like, oh well, I got my t-shirt on, so no.
Do you feel safer yet?
Right, no, I'm just, the people who know me know that, I think I've been in enough situations with people that they understand that if you are around me, like, safety is my number one thing. um but yeah, this was a stat. So some of y'all continue to praise some of the worst people in community because they're popular, have status, look good, or because you're trying to get with them, and that is wild to me. So protecting predators, transphobes, and rapists for what? A plastic trophy, a few dollars. None of that is worth sacrificing the safety of community. What happened to morals, logic, creating truly safe spaces, which, what's a truly safe space anyway? Instead, yeah, victim blame and focus on all the wrong things, and it's disgusting. When are people going to actually start filing charges against these individuals? Where are the house leaders and community leaders helping survivors navigate, reporting, to find legal resources, access therapy, and to get the support that they deserve? There should be zero tolerance for this behavior, but too many people keep letting it slide. Why? Because too many of your favorites are toxic, predatory, or being protected instead of held accountable. Popularity should never be a shield from accountability. And this statement isn't exclusive to Ballroom. The activism community has the same problem. A lot of y'all are just as bad, if not worse, because you hide behind awards, titles, and carefully crafted public personas while enabling harmful behavior. And I just feel like everybody should do better, and accountability shouldn't depend on popularity.
And I think that that statement is so profound. Like we've talked about it offline about the fact that I think that that gets to the heart of the conversation. Like obviously, what happened to this young man or what he says happened was real. It was painful. It was frightening, and it brought a big light. But I think that the light has to shine wider to a bigger conversation that we as a community need to have. I think that when you are a community under attack, which we are, nationally, federally, legislatively, politically, all of the things, um, it becomes incredibly unpopular to critique internally. You can't have those hard conversations because like we got bigger fish to fry, we got bigger battles to win, we got to fight those people out there, and then it leaves so many people inside those walls so vulnerable. And that's not about Ballroom, like that's about our community as a whole. And like there's this thought, I have seen people who have committed atrocious acts be basically let off the hook or not held accountable in any way because there's this idea of like, oh well, we don't throw people under the bus, like that's culturally not what we do, like we have to call them in, not call them out. And for me, that's cute, except when there's no mechanism for repair or accountability inside of those systems. Like those link back to like African proverbs and African villages where you didn't kick somebody out of the village. Like they had to do like this, and this to like repair for, to acknowledge their what they did wrong, to make it up to the person. to make it up to the rest of the village, to be held accountable internally, and then there was a path for them to return back to community, because they don't just like cast people out and then that's the end of it. Like they don't feed you to the wolves. Like we have a system of accountability internally that includes reparation for the harmed party, acknowledgement of what you did, and a way of earning yourself your way back into community. And so if all we're doing is telling people like, no, we're going to handle this internally, we don't cast people out, but then those systems of repair don't exist, all we're doing is recycling the same predators back through the community and leaving other people to get hurt. And then also teaching them that if they do something, they're not going to be held accountable, that they can just keep on doing whatever they're doing, and people will be mad for a little while. They can stay under, keep stuff swept under the rug for a while and then pop back up like nothing happened. And I think that in all fields, in ballroom, in community, in activism, we see that happen in nonprofit. We see that happen over and over and over again, where there's damage, there's harm caused. The people that want to push that person out of the circle are criticized for wanting to push them out of the circle. No, instead we pull them in and do that repair, except nothing happens. There
Right.
is no repair. That person isn't made whole. That acknowledgement isn't taken in the same public way that the harm was caused. And then everybody's just supposed to forget and keep it moving because we're community and that's what community does. So I think the idea of not throwing people out is a great one. I think it makes sense. I think it's much closer to who we are as a people than sort of the westernized, Europeanized ways that have been like thrust upon us. However, we have no longer maintained those structures to heal and repair and hold people accountable before we just unleash them back to what they was doing before that. And not only that, we often end up shunning the person that came forward more than we do the person that committed the harm.
Right.
And so then those people so unsupported and unseen and like unimportant and cast aside, that then they separate themselves. So now that person is gone out to the wolves to deal with the world on their own without the supportive community that they should have. And the person who committed the harm is prospering inside of the same community that they harmed. Like, therein lies the problem in my mind, in this situation and any of these situations.
Well, my thing is like I feel like so many you want to use the African proverb of like not casting people out of community, but when people did something like stolen community back then, yeah, they chopped off their hand before they brought let them come back. So I mean, it wasn't like, oh, we let's just talk about it, or you were exiled for such and such time, before you were allowed to come back to community, or there, like, we don't have that structure, we don't have systems like that. um so I mean, there has to be something else that's put into place, like, for people who are victims, or also, I don't like to call people victims, people who are survivors of sexual assault or just any kind of harm in community. um and like you said, this goes for the full community, because like I said, that disclosure at the bottom, this is not specifically for ballroom, because I'm part of the activist community too. And there, maybe y'all got a problem just as well. So I see some of y'all, and that's why I wrote that also, because I seen some people who were in the activism community who had their opinions on, or still have their opinions on, like, the ballroom community. um when it's not, no, it's not better, it's not so much better on that side. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
on,
it's not exclusive to ballroom by any means. No,
yeah,
you're
I'm on
absolutely
both
right. You're
sides. I
absolutely
mean,
right.
I didn't seen it happen in both lanes. So, like, let's take care of it, let's do something about it, let's put things in place to help people, get through this and to help people, help it not happen to people.
Why do you think it does happen?
Same reason why you said marginalized, and like I said, people come into the community thinking that they are in a safe space, so they let their guard down. Like, if you call yourself my brother and I think you my brother, why would I have to feel like I gotta watch my back and watch my back, watch my drink, watch my anything around you?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? We in the same family. Why I gotta, you know? But we have to remember that even in biological families, there are harmful people. Like,
yeah.
and I get like,
And this may have happened, and this may be behavior that you're acting out that you learned in your biological family. Like,
or this may be behavior that you learn in whatever family community that you have, that you're in, because yes, ballroom has houses, but there are gay families who have nothing attached to ballroom at all. Like, this is just
absolutely.
my family. So I mean, like I said, if biological families can do it, why would you think that, a ballroom family or activist family or a gay family, that it just couldn't happen in? But I think it is this term that we keep using of like this safe space. And because ballroom was made to be a safe space, I think people go into it now, because I mean, yes, it was crafted specifically for people who didn't have families, people who didn't have a space, but it's grown so big and so global that yes, it still is that for some people, but for some people they don't see it like that. you know Being in ballroom, I can tell the people who see it as this is my family, and then there's people who see it as this is my next claim to fame. This is like, this is my way to popularity. This is my way to, like, they don't give, some people who
And
don't
that
really.
and that's certainly true in the activism community as
It
well.
is. It is. It is. It's like I said, this conversation is not specific to ballroom.
Blah, blah. And I think it's also true the opposite end of that spectrum, that the creation of ballroom, the evolution of ballroom, and why it started, and why it existed, why it needed to exist, and why it did exist, and the purpose it served in community, was a beautiful thing, and it saved so many lives. With that being said, I think these things happened then too. But the world outside, whatever you found inside ballroom, as toxic as it may have been, was still safer than what you would usually find outside of it.
Right.
Like, you and whatever you were dealing with inside your house, inside a home with a roof over your head and food in your stomach, was safer than you being out on the street on your own to fend for yourself and the predators that you would find there. So by comparison, it was a safe space. And although we are still fighting for things and against things, and it is a very treacherous time for queer and trans people in this country, trans people specifically, there is still a level of safety and protection that we live within now that did not exist at all back then.
Right.
Like, oftentimes people don't do the right thing now, but at least it's determined to be the wrong thing when they don't do it. That didn't exist in a way back then. Like, even just being queer was criminal back then. Like, so you definitely weren't going to the police back then, because your existence was illegal, was criminalized. Now we are obviously fighting against some of those same principles and issues now, but not nearly to the extent of before they ever existed. And so I think these things always existed, but the world outside of ballroom changed to a degree. And so now the expectation of better behavior has to follow it.
Right.
And I don't think it always has.
Well, also, like, what, you know, all of this has kind of made me sit and think, like, well, what is a safe space anyway? Honestly, because what what's safe to me might not be safe to you. So I think we should stop using that term and like
Well,
coining
so
things as
yeah, so
safe.
I don't use it. So like I'm an educator, like that's what I do. Like I'm a consultant, I'm an educator. I teach about creating safer spaces. And there is a very well-known LGBTQ training platform, I guess, idea concept called safe spaces, where you go into a business, a community, whatever organization, and you teach them about, LGBTQ 101, about using proper pronouns, about, you know, classifications of folks and legislative things and whatever. You teach that, and then at the end of the week, the end of the day, the end of the hour, the end of the half a day, you get a sticker that you stick on your wall and it says safe space. And so when I started developing like the trainings that we do for blackout, I purposely refuse to use safe space training. I don't believe in safe spaces. If I teach you and your staff something and then slap this sticker on your wall that says I say that it's safe now, one, if somebody was out sick that day, I don't know what beliefs they're coming back with when they return from sick leave. If you hire three new people tomorrow, I don't know what that space looks like anymore. If you get new leadership in 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years, I don't know what that looks like and what that did to the space, but you still got my sticker on your window that's telling everybody that comes in this space that these people are educated about these things, they have been trained to use them properly, and that this is a space that you can come into and you will be safe there. In addition to the fact that what's safe for me may not be safe for you. So not only could it change in 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, it could change in 3 minutes. If I walk in the space and you walk out, if you walk out and I walk in, if I'm in a space with my ex who should be just as educated about these topics as I am, that's no longer a safe space for me. And that has nothing to do with what I just taught you, what curriculum I just imparted to you, or the sticker that's on your wall. So I always encourage people not to buy into the safe space concept and to not teach it because it's not real and it's not fair. And it also it gives people a false sense of confidence in a space that they may have to keep their guard up in. And so I am not a proponent of the idea of safe space, the concept of safe space, the safe space trainings, because I don't think that's a thing. I think that's a gimmick that we sell people and it makes people less safe because it exists. And so I can show you how to make your safe spacer or your space safer than it was before I walked into it. Hopefully,
What you got in that
in
cup over there?
general. Yeah, right. I wish. Um, I can make it safer, hopefully, than it was before I came inside of it. But it also is about what you do with it and the people who step inside of it in a good way and in a bad way. And so, like, I wish we would just do away. I mean, I think that, like, I decided I was going to say that out loud. I think the way that, like, white people, white queer people tend to feel like they can speak to or about black or black trans experience is very similar. Like what might be true for you and your experience in this world does not necessarily mean that that's what I'm going to experience in that same space. And so for me it's like all the same kind of concept of I can't determine for you or anybody else, nor can I teach you or anybody else how to make a space safe, because safety is different for everyone and it's different every second and it can change every second of the day. So I
Right.
wish we would just do away with that altogether.
Which is kind of when you ask me why do I think these things happen, and that's one of the reasons why I think these things happen. I think we've coined ballroom as a safe space, and people enter this space thinking it is completely safe, and like you said, it may be safer than the outside world, but they let their guard down because they are now in this safe space, right? Um, and just like in ballroom and activism and just like any other space, there can be some safe aspects to it and there can be some great things to it, but it can also be a space where predators lie. It can also be a space where it may be toxic to some people, and I think that we just need to be more vigilant, and I think we need to be more honest about these spaces that we are supposed to be cultivating as safe,
especially as we're bringing youth into them.
especially as we bring in youth into mind. I mean, there are some spaces that I won't even take my youth to. There are some
Yeah.
spaces that people ask me about, like, how do I cultivate this space that the youth will come? And like, I remember one year they were asking me that about like the Pride Festival, and they like this, and I'm like, I definitely think youth should experience Pride. I definitely think they should experience a festival. However, do I think the space that y'all cultivate every year is safe for them? No, I do not. I don't even know if it's safe for me at sometimes. So I'm not going to be like, yeah, just throw some youth things in here. No, if you want my opinion, you need to cultivate a space that is the furthest away from the beer tent as it can be, that is roped off so that adults cannot get into it, and make that space, and don't call it a safe space again, make that space, for youth. If you want something that youth are going to be safe in, you have to think about what the safety is specifically for them, and you have to build everything else around that. And that's how I look at programming for youth. And I think that that is how, like, as ballroom grows, that we need to start looking at what I like the safety, if we are bringing kids into this space, youth into these space, young adults, young people, like, how are we protecting them and making sure that they are in what is supposed to be a safe space?
That's a great segue to my last question for you and for the listening audience too. I would love to hear other people's opinions. So this conversation started with ballroom, so we're gonna end it there. If you had like a magic wand to wave or whatever, like what do you think you could do? Like what could be introduced? Like how do we make ballroom safer? Like what do you, how do we
How do
what does
we
that look
cultivate?
like?
Like, what is
Yeah, like
it?
what does it look like? Because it's easy to say, like, okay, be more accountable, be more, whatever. Like those are big buzzy words, but like what does that even look like?
I mean, I think that looks like having people in these spaces that when things happen, like, do we have mental health providers that we can connect these people to? You know what I mean? Is there some type of justice that we can help these people get? Because when I think about,
Like liaisons with like the criminal justice system or the
yeah,
mental health
I mean,
system.
like people in, like, whether they're in your house or whether they're contracted to work with your house or ballroom in as a whole. Like, do we have people that can step in and be like, hey, I know this happened to you, I know it was traumatic, this is where I can refer you to if you want to talk to this person. You know what I mean? Hey, do we have somebody in the house that can do something like go to the hospital with you if you call me and you tell me that something happened to you? Like, who is the person that you feel safe with, that can, or who is the person that I know that I can call in this house that would actually go to the hospital with me and be my support system through this? You know what I mean? Just
You know what I just thought of? Houses should have HR.
a jar.
H HR.
Oh, HR. Um,
Like you know how especially if you come from nonprofit world, if you work for a smaller small enough nonprofit, they don't have HR. Like a lot of small nonprofits don't have human resources. That's usually only larger organizations. And the function of human resources is if you have an issue with a coworker, if you have an issue with a boss, if you have an issue with a board member, if you have an issue with an executive director, if you're having issues with clientele, you can go to HR because they're part of the organization, but they're usually like contracted from outside of it so that you have somebody who isn't your boss that you can talk to about your boss. And I think that maybe something needs to be implemented where there's a safe person that can be somebody you can go to for help if you're not getting it from the people that you would normally tell. Because, like, obviously, it's just like in a house. If your sibling is doing something to you, you can go tell a parent, and the hope would be the parent would then step in and handle it. But if a parent is the person that's hurting you, who do you tell?
Well,
Or
well,
if the
there are,
parent isn't doing anything,
so I
where do
mean,
you
there are
go?
other levels to how.
Besides leave the house and then become a
Well,
double
no,
oh
no.
007 and then you're just
Well,
floating.
no, no, no. There are other levels to houses past parents. There are chapter leaders. There are chapter parents. There are regional parents. There are overalls in the houses. So I mean, there
But the
are
problem is if you are leadership, there's nothing to say that you haven't gone through all those levels of leadership in your
right,
house and still
right
not and nothing has happened. So if there was someone who is like a
outside
tech
of
but
leadership,
outside of it that would be able to be the I don't
mediator,
know,
liaison,
mediator.
kind of how
Yeah.
like when you what do they call the people that work in the ombudsman that works
Yeah,
in
the
yeah, yeah.
ombudsman.
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah,
vocabulary word. Yes, the ombudsman. Because the problem is like, and I think we've seen it in a lot of these conversations, people very rarely tell one person and nothing happens.
right.
There is a coordinated effort to make something go away so that it doesn't go public, because I think that's a big part of it. You don't want something to go, not only are you protecting people that you care about in that situation or that are popular, when like you saw what happened in this situation, it turned into being a thing about the house. And so then you have people from the house fighting with people outside of the house because now you're attacking the house, but we didn't have anything to do with it, do about it. We didn't know. The father knew, but we didn't know. So the problem's not the house. So now you have this house arguing with this house about this, that, and the third that has nothing to do with the victim, with the situation, or with sexual assault, because now it's turned into this competitive thing. So I think a lot of times the thought is we need to keep this family business in the family and handle it inside to not look bad in front of other people. But then, what happens to the person that then has no justice even within ballroom to because of that secrecy and that kind of circling the wagons to protect not only the perpetrator, but the image of the house, the image of the parents, and
Image
especially
of
if you're like
ballroom as a whole.
the image of ballroom in a whole, especially if you're a branch. And so now, you don't want the people above you to know that something's going wrong. Those people don't want people above them to know something's going wrong. Like, and it all reflects, right? If something happens on one level, it then reflects on the entire establishment, ballroom as a whole, like you just said, or the house or the parents or whatever, which does not, unless you are very committed to doing the right thing, regardless of consequence, that's a big factor in how people move, how it's going to make them look, how it's going to make the establishment look, how it's going to make the whole, like, barroom's a big business these days.
Hmm.
And that matters to people, and I think that it's easy, feels like the wrong word, but like it's easy to want to quiet things down, to not have to not allow the floodgates to open and it turn into a major controversy. But then whose interest gets lost, who isn't protected as you're trying to circle those wagons for reasons.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say, like I said, I'm gonna say it again. Like I said, I have zero tolerance for sexual assault. I have zero tolerance for crimes against all women, children, elderly folk, disabled. Like none of that. Like so, I can sit here and I can be like reform and all of that, but like. Yeah, they still working on me. I'm like off with their heads. And I try not to be because, but like I just have to be honest. And like I said, that's just the T Douglas opinion factor right there. But yeah, I don't have tolerance for it at all. I'm just like, so I mean, I can say like HR and reform and like I don't know. I just saw in one state they now they can execute pedophiles by rapid gunfire, and I was like, bravo. So I like I said,
Okay.
they still working on me. Um, however, like I just really hope that we can put like some type of systems in place so that we can actually make these spaces safer for people to be continue to have this creative art and this creative space flourish because it is
It's
so
just
much needed.
it's so crazy because as you were talking, I was realizing how many people I saw commenting on the situation in like a we need to reform, we need to change, we need to do better kind of way. That I also know things that they've done to people. I don't know why that popped up in my mind while you were talking, but like it, literally, I was like picking out comments in my head where
Well, it's because if
like
you've done something to
all this
somebody,
reform sounds all this reform sounds good until you realize it's such a embedded part of culture that like a
so
lot of those people that I saw being supportive of the victim and like calling for all this stuff to happen, like I know what you did last summer. You know what I'm saying? I've been around this world long enough to know what you did. And so ew.
yeah, so I'm like when I think so like I said, still working on me. When I think about like reform and stuff, so what was that movie that Zoe Kravitz had with the guy stripper Mike, Magic Mike? And he
Magic
was
Mike.
like, no, it wasn't Magic Mike, but the guy from Magic Mike. Um, and he played like this photographer, and he took these girls to this island, and
Oh,
like
I remember that movie.
right, and like when it brings me back to like that movie where he's like, oh, there's a power in forgetting, right? Because the whole thing was like you make the people forget and then you kidnap them again the next year, right?
Blink twice.
Blink twice. So you remember in that movie where he goes, all you have to do is have a really sincere apology and make them believe it, and then it eventually you go missing for a while, and then it all goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he sat there and he gave that amazing apology, the heartfelt, like tearful apology, and then he kidnapped some girls and took them back to the island again. The same girls, and when I think about like reform, that often pops into my mind, which is why sometimes I'm just like off with their heads, I just, somebody still let's chop no hands, nubs. Like
It's just so hard.
I
It's just like the death
know
penalty with me because like I know how many people on death
wrongfully
row are black
accused.
and brown and they're wrongfully accused. So it's so hard for me to be like extremist with things like that because you see how many people like were innocent and they don't find out till like 40 years later and whatever. So it's so hard, but at the same time, like you just don't want to leave people out here vulnerable. It's so hard.
I
It's
mean,
not an easy
it's a very hard.
conversation.
It is. That's why I say it's still working on me. It's still working on me. I'm a work in progress. And I know we have very like conflicting views and still very similar at the
It's
same
so
time.
hard. We do. That's why we
But
have such
like
good conversations.
I think it's also like for me, I'm a feminist 100%, and like I just I'm just like always in like that protector mode. I
Yeah.
grew up like with five sisters. I have nieces and nephews, and I'm just always in that. So
It's just it's just so hard. I mean, it really brings it back to full circle though, right? Like this criminal justice system is so broken, which is why we avoid it. But then the internal structures that we could use it as an alternative are so broken or underdeveloped that they don't work. And so like here we are.
yeah. So I guess like for me, my final thought would be um to one, stop coining these spaces as safe spaces just because they're LGBTQ spaces, and just because they were created with those intentions. Um, and also, two, um, victim blaming out. It's never a good thing. You know, I'm with Olivia Benson. Always believe the victim. Sorry. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I agree. I think my takeaway is probably just like think like before you have these comments and say these things like I don't know what happens in trauma where you have been a victim of trauma and somehow that makes you less sympathetic to other victims of trauma. Like
or
seek therapy. Like I don't know what there have been people that I've seen comment about this situation that I was so incredibly disappointed in their reactions because they're really nice, dope people. And so, with that being said, stop pretending or stop protecting shitty people. I don't care how long you've known them. I don't care how good of friends you are. I don't care how good of friends they've been to you. I don't know anyone that has protected an abuser, that has protected just a shitty, terrible person that doesn't, on some level, know who and what they are. If you're close to that person, you probably know better than I know what a shitty person they are. Stop protecting those people, like in any circumstance. Like, stop. Like, I don't understand it. If you are a horrible person and I'm really close to you, I'm gonna be the first person who about to tell you about yourself. And so I don't understand the mentality of protecting bad people that you know are bad people. Like I don't understand it. No matter how much you love them or how long you've known them or long they've been good to you, I don't understand that. I don't understand it. Stop doing that.
I would say like also this mentality of it happened to me, I got through it, and then doing it to somebody else, because that's also another thing that I see widely and throughout the LGBT.
Which most predators have been victims, which means they deserve help, but that also doesn't mean that they also don't require accountability.
Right, but you also have to seek help.
Yeah, yeah,
You
absolutely.
you have to
Absolutely.
seek help. You know, so yeah, you definitely, it requires accountability, because I do see that a lot of people that I like, even like what you said, there are people who commented about this or that who have also done something, and like you not being held accountable. You weren't held accountable, but you quick to like throw the hatchet at somebody else. You know, I think I think karma is a big thing. Um, which is why I try to live my life the way I live my life. Not saying that am the greatest person in the world and I don't make mistakes, because I'm human and I definitely do. But I try intentionally every day not to harm people. Like, and I don't find that it's that hard, to be honest.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
what?
I've always said the same. Like I'm far from perfect and I'm sure that I've hurt people in my
Right.
past, but anyone that I have hurt, it's never been on intentional. Like being humans and bumping into other humans in the world, we are bound to cause bruises on people that we don't even know that we harmed. But anyone who I've ever harmed, it's never been like on purpose. Like I never sought to hurt you. and would feel genuinely bad if I knew that I did. And I just don't know that that's true for everybody.
I
Some
know
people are
that's
just
not true.
collateral damage for people and they just keep it pushing.
I know that's not true for all people. I just think that I just think it's really hard with everything that we deal with as a community. I feel like we should be more so trying to keep each other safe because of all of the outside things that we already have to go through that are not inside our community. I think when we have people who are inside the community who are intentionally causing harm to other people, like we have to find a way to stop that. Um,
Not to mention the fact that a lot of times those habits that you're picking up from our oppressors are what you're bringing into community, and that's not okay either.
right. So yeah, I think we have to think at a more larger scale because of how big and how global ballroom has become. That we need to have some type of systems in place because I don't see it getting smaller. It's not going to get smaller, it's just going to get bigger. So if we don't start putting things in place now to protect our community, and a lot of times we are protecting community from community, um, that there may be a time where we stop seeing it grow. There may be a time where people stop coming to balls and people stop wanting to be involved in such a beautiful thing because they think that it is a toxic environment. And
And we owe it to the art, and we owe it to like our ancestors that built it, um
to
to
uphold
protect it, to
standards,
uphold it, and to protect it.
right? I mean, ballroom should be like, if you love ballroom, it should really be like a baby to you that you should want to protect it and cultivate it and watch it grow into something that's larger and something that everybody can be proud of who has
And it lives beyond us. Like, we managed to carry it this far. Like, we picked it up from somebody else and we carried it this far, but we have to be able to do the things that need to be done to make sure that it gets carried for generations and generations beyond us. And the legacy of it needs to be the beauty and the art and the culture and the history, not these things. And
right.
until we acknowledge and tackle and are honest about these things, we can't preserve it and pass it on the way that it deserves to be.
Yeah. And I think, with that being said, I think we should end this.
Absolutely. And thank you to our audience that was a part of the live today, that left their comments. We appreciate it. These conversations are always better when y'all are a part of them. Your thoughts are important and we love to hear them. And thank you to the people who will watch this. We usually end up with about 1,000 more views after we post this on Apple Podcasts or YouTube or wherever it lands. And so we thank you for the comments you leave when you watch the show and things that you thought and observed and want to talk about, that we can bring up in the next conversation.
Well, y'all could have been anywhere. Y'all here with us, and we appreciate you. Um, and we hope y'all have a safe night and a prosperous week. All right. Subscribe to Blackout.
Subscribe to Blackout.